the chair comes online. Firstly to say, this is to remind everyone that the meeting today will be held in the public domain, which means it's being live streamed on the internet and will also be recorded today for archive purposes. The chair will also ask all present if they could introduce themselves and their positions. During the meeting, should you wish to leave your camera on, please do so, but could you please mute your microphone until you're called by the chairman to speak? Should you wish to speak, in the Teams software, there's a hands up function. Would you please use the hands up function? Or if there are any technical difficulties with that, because occasionally there are, obviously if you can come on screen and just raise your hand, that would be great. And the procedure that will be followed for the meeting today is at the very back of your papers on the agenda. So for those watching online, it will be on the internet, on the link, and at the very back of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Standards Committee. I'll, rather than ask you all to introduce yourselves, because I think it gets a bit complicated then, I'll introduce myself. I'm Richard Hendicott. I'm the chairman. Also present, as I understand it, are Mrs. Lorna Tinsley, who is the vice chairman, Mrs. Pat Hallett, who is an independent member, Mr. Gerwin Watkins, who's another independent member, Councillor Robertson is here. I'm not sure about Councillor Cuddy. Is he here? No, it doesn't seem he is. So those are the members present. Karen, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Mr. Alexander, who is the co-opted member of the committee. He's unable to be here today. And we have apologies from Councillors Rhiannon Birch and Ben Gray, who have advised us that they have an interest, so they will not be taking part in the meeting today because of that interest. Thank you.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is to receive any declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest with regard to today's meeting? No, there's a shaking of heads and no. Right, so we'll move on to the report of the Deputy Monitoring Officer. And I have here with me Mrs. Vicky Davidson, who will give a short introduction.
Yes, good morning, members. I'm Victoria Davidson. I'm supporting the committee today and available to give advice in relation to any matters that arise in the context of the procedure and any queries that the members may have in dealing with the matter.
Thank you. Well, the main item on the agenda today, in fact, the only one, is relates to a complaint against Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Rowlands, you're present, as I understand it?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. You've also got Councillor Carroll there to assist you, if you like. You're presumably not in the same room, are you?
No, we're not, Chair.
No. So I'm not sure how you're going to assist. If you want a break at any stage and you want to chat, I suggest you ask, and I'll see if I can adjourn for a short while. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. Right.
Then we've also got from the Ombudsman office, Louise Morland. You present?
Yes, good morning.
Morning. And Sinead Cook.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. And who will be representing the Ombudsman then? Which one of you?
That's my role this morning, Chair. That's Sinead Cook.
Sinead Cook. Okay, thank you. Right. It's the procedure is going to be a little difficult to follow because we've got a hybrid meeting. Councillor Rowlands, the meeting will be held in public. If there are any confidential or sensitive matters that you want to raise, please do so. And I will consider whether those aspects ought to be heard in private, and we can exclude the public if there is any public or the press who are looking in. This is not a court of law; it's a standards committee. We'll have to keep to some sort of formality because we don't want it to be everybody shouting at the same time. So I'd be grateful if you would either raise your hand or put the hand figure, and I will try and make sure you all have a say. But I would like to think it'll be as informal as I can make it. If anybody at any stage wants a break or anything, just please put up your hand and we'll see if we can accommodate you. The way this seems to work, Councillor Rowlands, is that we have to consider the facts. And I will be asking you what facts, if any, you disagree with. If there are, or if there is any disagreement about the facts, then we will determine those, and I will ask the Ombudsman to put forward their case, and you can ask questions, and you can put forward your case, and the Ombudsman can ask questions. Once we've heard that, we will adjourn, and the committee will then consider those facts and make a decision on the facts. So we will decide A, B, C, etc., etc. We will come back to you then. And then the consideration will be whether or not there should be, what steps rather the committee should take. And then again, we will adjourn and discuss that with us. And then we will tell you what the outcome is. And then after that, you will receive written notification. So you've had the papers here, Councillor Rowlands. Looking at the papers, I suppose first of all, do you accept what the complaint that has been made?
Thank you, Chair. I do accept the complaint that has been made against me. I believe that Councillor Moore, the complainant, as leader, had every right to complain. He felt that I brought the office into disrepute, and that's his prerogative.
Fine. Well, that makes life a lot easier, in the sense that we don't have to. What's happened? Well, we don't have to have a dispute as to the facts and can go through it. We can hear from the Ombudsman with a brief outline of the facts to remind us, but I trust that we have all read the papers. It's the usual. This committee normally reads all the papers well. So if you can give a brief outline on the facts, bear with me for a moment.
I just wonder, Chair, if it would be helpful at this stage to clarify those matters, those facts that the Ombudsman's identified in the investigation report as being matters in dispute. And secondly, just to clarify that prior to the committee meeting today, and in line with the procedure, that Councillor Rowlands had an opportunity to indicate whether he wanted to call any witnesses. And I think it's right to say that Councillor Rowlands has indicated that he doesn't wish to. But in relation to the point you were just dealing with, it might be helpful if those matters were clarified.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have introduced Mrs. Davidson, Victoria Davidson. She is she's effectively clerking it. She's legally the legal rep officer here, and she's quite rightly explaining to me how I should deal with this matter.
And Chair, that the matters are set out on page 18 of 25 of the Ombudsman's investigating officer's reports at paragraph 86 to 88. Would you like me to go through those? Or
Let's just have a look.
Can I just mention that Councillor Robertson has got his hand up?
Yes, Councillor Robertson, sorry, you've got your hand up, yes?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could we make it clear that this is actually a review, that the Ombudsman has actually in the past made a decision on this case, and that this is actually a review? This is for members of the public who might be watching.
Well, Councillor Rowlands had raised that point, but that's not the purpose of this committee. The Ombudsman made a decision that was subject to a review at the request of, I think it was Councillor Moore. He made, the Ombudsman made a change of decision. It was referred to the Standards Committee, and at a meeting in November, we said that yes, this was a matter that the Standards Committee should look into. So I don't think that point is of any relevance to these proceedings. Yes, Mrs. Davidson?
I wasn't going to say anything further, Chair. I was just going to offer to go through those paragraphs, but if you've located them. Well,
there are two or three issues which were in dispute.
Yes.
So if he accepts those, then that's it.
Yes.
Where are those three? 88, 89, 88, 86, 7 and 88. Yes. Councillor Rowlands, just for the sake of clarity, if you look at the report at 86, 87, 88, assuming you've got the papers in front of you, there were three issues there that were disputed. Do you now accept those or not?
Could you just clarify the pages, please, Chair?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's page 18 of 25.
18.
25. 80. The disputed fact 86 is, did Councillor Rowlands have particular knowledge of planning permission requirements and the importance of adhering to planning regulations at the time?
In relation to that particular point, I would say, like most new councillors who sit on the planning committee, we have training, but they're always a whistle-stop tour, as the officers tend to use that phrase quite often. And I would say I had difficulty in understanding planning law like any member of the public would as well, even with the training. So I still dispute that I would say, limited or confused knowledge of planning.
Okay, sorry, that is effectively, in legal terms, a plea of mitigation. You're explaining why you had a difficulty, but I think we've got to know whether you accept that you had particular knowledge of planning permission requirements and the importance of adhering to planning regulations at the time of the event. As I say, you'll be given plenty of opportunity of putting forward reasons on your behalf, but do you accept that or not?
I accept that I had to put a planning application in, which I did put one in. Yes.
So you accept that 86, that point at 86 now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good. The next one, was Councillor Rowlands aware of the consequences of opening the watering hole before a change of use planning permission was implemented and the potential breach of planning control? Were you aware of those consequences?
At that particular point in time, no, I was not aware. There was other applications that I heard.
Let me stop you. That you don't accept that, and I think that's, you've made that clear. So that disputed fact is still there, is still disputed. 88 is, did Councillor Rowlands allow an image of himself wearing the mayor's chain to be used to endorse his business? Do you accept that or not?
No, I do not accept that, no.
Don't accept that, right, okay. So there are in fact two disputed facts which we have got to determine, we'll go on to that, but I see Mr. Watkins has his hand up, so do you want to comment? I think you're on mute at the moment.
On paragraph 88, Chairman, should we really be looking at that? Because the Ombudsman concluded, on balance, I consider there is insufficient evidence to indicate that Councillor Rowlands allowed the image to be published. Is that a matter that really we should be considering this morning?
Well, that's a decision for the committee, and I suppose we could consider that now by suspending this meeting.
Yes, Chair. However, under the procedure, the investigating officer will be going through her report, and she may want to respond to that as she goes through her report.
Okay. Well, yes, okay. Mrs.
Chair, can I just interject at this point? In relation to the proceedings, we haven't formally commenced real discussions around the hearing, and I've noticed that Councillor Cuddy has come online, and Councillor Cuddy is the Town and Community Council representative on this committee. So with everybody's permission, as Councillor Cuddy arrived late, I just want to make sure that everybody's happy for Councillor Cuddy to join, because we haven't got any further in, but that's a matter for all parties to accept.
Yeah. Councillor Cuddy, you're with us now, are you?
I certainly am. I was in the wrong meeting.
Oh, right, okay. Well, hopefully nobody will have any objection to Councillor Cuddy. He's a regular member of this committee, and he can help us on that.
Councillor
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Robertson, yeah.
Sorry, just point of order, really. I think Councillor Cuddy will have to say whether or not he declares an interest.
Yes, I have.
Okay, I don't have any interest to declare in this matter.
Thank you very much. Bear with me for a moment. I suppose I could ask the Ombudsman if they want to proceed with that, or do they agree it shouldn't be?
I mean,
A break at this stage to consider the procedure. I don't want to be discussing things that we don't have to discuss, and we will. So I will leave those who are not members of the committee will now leave, and this will go into private session. And then I'm not sure how you're told when he comes back on.
Chair, I would probably say it's probably best. Would you like to give, say, 10 minutes?
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll recommence at not before 10:30. All right? So,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chair, if I could ask my support officer that to stop the recording on the internet for now.
Right, thank you very much, and thank you for rejoining. Mrs. Cook, the committee are of the view that, bearing in mind the Ombudsman was, on balance, wasn't satisfied that 88 was the standard was breached, and he disputes it. The committee are of the view that we don't really need to hear evidence on that, but it's up to you, and if you would like to consider that. But before we go to that point, Councillor Rowlands, members of the committee are a little concerned that you're not, that you're perhaps not understanding the procedure, and I just wanted to confirm that you did understand it. The purpose is what we have to establish the facts so that we know exactly what the facts are. A lot of them are undisputed. There are these three which are not, which are disputed. We're trying to sort those out. You will be given every opportunity to put forward your reasoning, your plea in litigation, etc. I mean, we have read the papers, and we appreciate that you know, you took every steps after this was all pointed out to you to resign from the company and not get involved, etc. That will be, if you like, your plea in litigation when you will put forward your reasons. So do you understand that? At the moment, all I'm asking for is just to set out whether you accept the facts or not.
That's much clearer, Chair. At the time, earlier, it was, yeah, a bit confusing.
Fine, okay, well, I'm sorry, that's probably my fault for not explaining it to you. There we are. Right, Mrs. Cook, with regard to 88, do you want to proceed with that or not?
Thank you, Chair. The Ombudsman set out his considerations within the report and accepted that there wasn't evidence to suggest that that Councillor Rowlands did allow his image to be used in that way. So I'm satisfied with that. That's fine.
Fine, okay. So 88 will not be accepted as a fact. So dealing with 87, perhaps you'd like to remind us of the circumstances concerning that fact. Just before you do, Councillor Rowlands, when she's finished, you will be able to ask her some questions, all right? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Again, as set out in the report, really, it's acknowledged that the Councillor Rowlands is concerned about the level of the training that he'd received and the level of information that he was given. However, the evidence shows that the senior planning officer did explain the difference between the licensing process and the planning process. There was a meeting with Councillor Rowlands and his colleague to discuss that. The establishment required the change of use of planning permission, and Councillor Rowlands was aware of that at the time. And the senior planning officer has given evidence to say that they told Councillor Rowlands and his colleague that although it was not illegal, if the business did open, it would be in breach of planning control, and there was a risk of enforcement action. So it's acknowledged that Councillor Rowlands didn't think he was doing anything illegal, but the Ombudsman considered that he ought to have been more aware of the potential impact on his own situation, being a member of the planning committee and being in breach of planning control, and the impact that might have on the public perception of what he's done. It's also noted within that he didn't attempt to seek any further guidance regarding his position. The monitoring officer has given evidence that she has an open door and has a good relationship with Councillor Rowlands, and he has been to her for advice before. And Councillor Rowlands actually acknowledged in his interview that he's not sure why he didn't do that at that time, other than he was invested in the business and invested in his business relationship with Mr. Lewis as well. And Councillor Rowlands acknowledged with hindsight that he perhaps should have left the business earlier, and that he should have taken into account his role when taking the steps that he did. And I think that is all as set out in the report as well.
Thank you very much. They won't. The next stage could be for you to call supporting witnesses, but Councillor Rowlands rather said he didn't want any witnesses, so we haven't got any witness. Do you now want to ask Mrs. Cook any questions, Councillor Rowlands, before you can make your representations on your version of the fact? Are there any questions arising out of what she has said?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Now, do you want to make your representations and tell us why you don't accept that fact, as it were?
In relation to point 87, whether I had known about the breach, if I did open it up, as I stated in the report, you know, I'm a new councillor. You know, the training I don't think was adequate training, and like any member of the public, or you know, I'm assuming other councillors, planning and licensing rules are very complicated. I'm not a solicitor. I'm not a planning officer, and when I did go and ask advice from the planning officer, it was very grey. There was a no or yes answer, and in hindsight, I should have asked the monitoring officer for more advice. I don't know why I didn't do that. I don't know really what to say. Well, sorry. I should have taken more steps to do so. I think it's more to do with my naivety. You know, there's nothing more I can say, Chair. Sorry.
Very much. I think I'll now ask are there any members of the committee who would like to ask questions? Firstly, of Mrs. Cook, if you could put your hand up, or if there's anybody. No. Is any members of the committee would like to ask any questions of Councillor Rowlands? Again, if you could, yes, Mrs. Hallett, would you like to ask, and then Mrs. Tinsley? You're on mute, Mrs. Hallett.
Sorry, Chair.
Right.
Councillor Rowlands, it's quite concerning that as a member of the planning committee, you don't fully understand the rules. I understand you've now received further training in respect of your own. Can you say you feel more competent now as a member of the planning committee?
Yeah, I was advised by the Ombudsman, or asked by the Ombudsman to do more training. I made steps approach to go and see the monitoring officer, and she provided me more training in relation to code of conduct type of stuff. So I've also been reading books about planning as well. So I do feel much more confident now on the planning committee. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tinsley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rowlands, you in your mitigation there, you raised the matter of inadequate training, and then you go on to say that as any member of the public would not necessarily understand planning. Totally agree with that. But you're not a member of the public. You're a councillor, and as part of that, there's an accountability in terms of your honesty when you are out of your depth. You're a member of a number of committees. At what point, as a member of the planning committee, did you realise that you did not have a full grasp of what was going on, and why, if you realised it at that point, did you not seek further training at that point, predating all of this?
In relation to that, I've raised many times with officers, democratic services, of can we have more training? I raised it with the head of democratic services in relation, not just in relation to planning, but other committees, how scrutiny works and that type of stuff. It's never materialised. I'm not saying this in my defence, but I suffer from dyslexia, so trying to understand the agendas and stuff and how things work, I find confusing. So I've asked on many occasions, but nothing ever materialises. And that's all I can say in relation to that. Sorry.
That's fine. Chair, may I have one more question, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So, on reviewing the documents, it would appear, I've written out a short chronology, that there were 3 distinct opportunities where you expressed confusion or a lack of understanding, and I'll just read those out to you. The 29th of March 2019 was one of those opportunities. That was an opportunity where you had an informal meeting with the planning officer. The 10th of May, when the senior planning officer happened to come on site when you were there. I know that wasn't an arranged meeting, but you were there and had a further discussion with him. And the 30th of May, which was the date the Barry Town Council Planning Committee entered their objection onto the portal. And you would have been aware of that because it would have been on the portal on that date. So 3 opportunities where you said, I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I really don't understand why you weren't able to go and seek assistance on those 3 opportunities. So each time, either the monitoring officer or a colleague or somebody, ideally the monitoring officer, obviously. So what do you think about that?
I should have gone and asked advice on those opportunities. In hindsight, yeah, it does look, bad. I didn't, but I was obviously been advised by others within the business to say everything will be fine, and I'm, you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I was listening to others and not understanding the issue, and I regret that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson. Councillor Robertson, your hand. Did you want to?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do want to ask a question. Councillor Rowlands, in the light. Oh, thank you, Chair. Councillor Rowlands, in the light of your increased experience as a councillor and the additional training you've had, what would you have done differently in this process if you could do it again?
If I could, I wouldn't do it again. I don't want to open any business. This is not my competence in doing that. So I wouldn't open anything again. But if I was going to, one, I wouldn't have opened the bar. Two, I wouldn't go into business with anyone else. And three, just go and ask more advice, and don't be afraid to go and ask for advice from people within the council. So yeah, that's what I would do differently.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands.
Good, thank you very much. Mrs. Howard, your hand is up. Should it be? You're on mute.
Can I just ask one final question?
Yes.
You knew that Barry Council had actually objected to your application. You knew there were problems with your constituents who were opposing it. But do you think it was considered by you to be arrogant in going ahead with actually opening without planning permission?
In relation to Barry Town Council objecting to, I felt that was more of a political stunt rather than because the councillors in that particular ward were actively stirring it up. I don't think it was arrogant on my side of it. I'm quite an honest person. I like to consult with my residents on stuff, and I wanted to do that. But again, I was told by the business partner not, don't need to, we got it all sorted, and in hindsight, I wish I had, to be honest.
But as a councillor, don't you think you owe that to speak to your residents about these, about your candidate, your constituent about this? I mean, does it appear that you're abusing your position and that you do appear arrogant?
I should have gone and asked the constituents, but I don't think I would appear arrogant, and it'd be up to the public to decide whether I'm arrogant or not. I'm not an arrogant person, but maybe that's the perception people may have. I don't know.
I think that's a possibility, particularly in your role as a councillor. Did you not take these things into consideration? Obviously you didn't, but would you in hindsight?
In hindsight, I would have asked them, yes.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for those questions, and thank you for the answers, Councillor Rowlands. I think the next procedure is for us to retire again, I'm afraid, for us to consider that situation and that fact, whether it has been established or not. We will then come back, and Vicky, can you remind us of the procedure then? When we come back?
Yes, yeah, we come back, Chair, and you will inform on behalf of the committee that the decision the committee has reached in relation to this stage of the procedure.
Yes, that fact, and then we will have representations as to what, if any, sanctions there should be. So, Councillor Rowlands, if you understand that, we will come to a view on that disputed fact, and we will tell you the outcome. At that stage, the Ombudsman will address us as to whether all that amounts to a breach, And the sanction, I think, at that stage. Yes, and the sanction, and you will have a chance to address us and put forward your plea in mitigation, as long as you understand that. Okay, Mrs. Cook, you've got your hand up.
I do, yes. Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to quickly recap something. I know that we went off a little bit into the mitigation there. I just wanted to revert briefly to the disputed fact, which was the consequences of opening, that the change of use was a potential breach of planning control. I just wanted to clarify that that's not contested by Councillor Rowlands, and that the senior planning officer did say that it was a potential breach of planning control.
Thank you for reminding us on that. Mrs. Hallett, is there something you want to say?
No, I'm sorry. Sorry, Chair.
Can you if you can put your hand down, then that makes it easier. The hand is still there. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll break off now and go into private session until 11 o'clock.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, so if we can organise that, Karen.
Chair, if that is longer, what I could do is contact members, but if we go for 11, and then if we have to have longer, I can contact members and I can then rearrange for them to join again. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Because it's difficult, isn't it, to know how long it might take.
Yeah. So, but if we go for, say, could we say 11:05, because it's now just
11, yes.
If we say 11:05, everyone, and then that will give the officer time, my end as well, to reproduce the internet link for the internet as well for the public to rejoin to view. Thank you all. Amy, can you confirm the live stream is on? Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Standards Committee hearing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. For those who are following, we are at 10.6.4 of the procedure. It's a fairly complicated procedure. Councillor Rowlands, we have considered those the points put forward by both yourself and Mrs. Cook. The Standards Committee are satisfied that that fact has been established and that you were aware of the consequences of opening the water hole before a change of use planning permission was implemented and the potential breach of planning control. So that has been established. So we now move on to the next stage where based on the facts as we have found, and if I can give you a brief resume of that, it's been accepted that he had particular knowledge of planning permission requirements and the importance of adhering to planning regulations at the time of the events. Councillor Rowlands, we have established the fact that he was aware of the consequences of opening the watering hole before a change of use planning permission, but the issue with regard to the photograph and the mayor's chains, that is not established. So we now have to, I shall now invite the investigating officer to make representations as to whether or not, based on those facts, and as we found them, the member has failed to comply with the code of conduct. After that, you will be able to make any remarks to us, Councillor Rowlands, as to whether you, as to that point, and we will then retire again. I've been advised I can't really take the third stage and fourth stage together, so we will have to have another break there. So do you understand all that, Councillor Rowlands?
I do too. I just have one request, if I possibly could. This whole process this morning is causing me distress. My anxiety is currently going through the roof at the moment. So when I have my opportunity to make my representative, I was wondering if Councillor Carroll can do that on my behalf, because at the moment I'm not coping at the moment. So I would just ask if I could have that request.
Yes, certainly. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Do you want a longer break? Do you want a break for a while, or do you want to? You feel you're able to continue?
I'm able to continue. Just the longer it goes on, the higher my anxiety goes up.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to allow your friend or your person helping you, Councillor Carroll, and he can ask questions if you like. If that will that help your case? Help you?
If possible, yeah.
Okay. All right. Or make representations. That's fine. Yes. So, Mrs. Cook, would you like to advise to speak to the committee on whether the facts now the member has failed to comply with the code of conduct?
Thank you, Chair. The decision on whether the member has breached the code of conduct, of course, rests with the Standards Committee. The Ombudsman took the view that the facts as agreed indicated behaviour which was suggestive of a breach of the code of conduct. The Ombudsman noted that when the monitoring officer raised the issues concerning the establishment with Councillor Rowland, he took swift action to rectify matters and close the business down. When this was unsuccessful, he resigned from the company with immediate effect, withdrew the planning application and took no further part in the business or planning process, and ultimately lost his investment within that business. That said, the public rightly expects that those who serve in public office will uphold high standards. The Ombudsman noted that members of the local authority planning committees must ensure that they are above reproach in their own dealings in planning matters to maintain public confidence in the council's ability to fairly and appropriately take planning decisions, and that this matter understandably drew adverse local publicity concerning Councillor Rowland's position as a member of the council and of the town council. The Ombudsman concluded that Councillor Rowland's conduct in failing to consider his situation appropriately or seek advice about his role and position in advance of the decision to open the establishment suggested a significant lack of judgment and had the potential to impact on the mutual relationship of trust that exists between the council, the town council, its elected members and members of the public. The Ombudsman determined that the evidence supports a finding that Councillor Rowland's action brought his office as a councillor and the council into disrepute and are suggestive of a breach of paragraph 6.1a of the Code of Conduct. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, you can now address us on whether you think whether you think you have failed or not to with your code of conduct. We are not considering a sanction at this stage, so that, if you like, the plea and mitigation will come a bit later. Do you want to address us with what Mrs. Cook has said, or would you prefer Councillor Carroll to address us?
If Councillor Carroll could do that, if I ask, because
fine. Yeah. That's fine. Councillor Carroll, thank you for coming along. Do you feel able to do that, or do you want to speak to? Do you want a short adjournment to speak to Councillor Rowlands, or do you feel you can mitigate, not mitigate, rather, put forward an argument as to whether or not there has been a breach?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on Councillor Rowland's behalf. I think he's found this situation extremely distressing, and he would prefer for a representative to speak in his place. Councillor Rowlands accepts that he breached the code of conduct. He accepts that he was naive in doing so. I will leave my remarks there because I believe I'm right in saying that comments in mitigation come later. So that's all we have to say on that matter.
Fine. Okay. Well, that's fine. So I'm afraid we're going to have another short break, or not necessarily short, but to consider the representations made and whether there have been breaches. How long do we need? 10 minutes, quarter hour?
5 minutes, 10 minutes. Yeah.
Let's try for 25 past, okay? So again, we go through the same procedure and we'll reconvene at 25 past. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, all parties are present, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Rowlands, we've discussed this matter and we have decided that you did fail to comply with the code of conduct. We now move on to invite the member and the investigating officer to make representations as to whether or not the committee should apply a sanction and what form any sanction should take. There are three courses open to us. One is that no action needs to be taken in respect of the failure to comply with the code of conduct. In other words, it's probably a trivial breach and is not of importance. B, the member should be censured. Or C, the member should be suspended or partially suspended from being a member or co-opted member of the authority for a period not exceeding 6 months. So those are the options that are open to us. I'm going to invite the investigating officer to address us first as to whether she thinks we should apply a sanction and what form any sanction should take. So, Mrs. Cook, if you're available, are you able to do that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment on sanction. I do consider that the breach of the code of conduct was a serious one. The actions the member played out very publicly, and there were significant numbers of complaints from members of the public about the establishment and press interest, which was likely to have been magnified by the member's planning committee role. The Ombudsman notes that Councillor Rowlands had acknowledged his conduct was not appropriate and that he apologised for his actions and expressed his shame and remorse. You will also note the member has indicated that this matter has had a significant impact on him personally, reputationally, and the whole situation has had a financial impact on him. It was with this in mind that the Ombudsman's Director of Investigations initially considered that further action might not be in the public interest. The public interest test is, of course, a discretionary test, and the Ombudsman considered that test again when he received a review a request to review the decision. He is entitled to exercise that discretion in that regard, and considered that as local public interest in the matter remained high, and there was evidence suggested of a breach of the code, that the matter should be reconsidered, noting that the overriding purpose of the ethical standards regime in Wales is to uphold standards of conduct in public life and maintain confidence in local democracy. On reconsideration of the evidence after further investigation, the Ombudsman considered it appropriate for the Standards Committee to consider the mitigation of the member and determine what impact that might have on any sanction that it considered appropriate. I have considered carefully the Apw Sanctions Guidance, which has been provided to the Standards Committee, and I note that the purpose of a sanctions regime is to provide a disciplinary response to an individual member's breach of the code of conduct, place the misconduct and appropriate sanction on public record, deter future misconduct on the part of the individual and others, promote a culture of compliance across the relevant authorities, and to foster public confidence in local democracy. The guidance proposes first considering the seriousness of the breach, including reference to the extent to which the member's actions have or are likely to bring his office or authority into disrepute. I would consider that the actions of the member, which were motivated by involvement in a financial venture intended to result in personal gain. Paragraph 39.6 of the Sanctions Guidance suggests that a suspension may be appropriate if the member's actions have brought the office or authority into disrepute, and if the breach merits a disciplinary response. This includes if it is unlikely that there will be a further breach and the member has shown insight and remorse. I would therefore suggest that a suspension might be appropriate, but obviously in considering whether a suspension is warranted, the Standards Committee will also need to consider both the mitigating and the aggravating circumstances. There are some mitigating factors, which I'll briefly set out for you. Once advice was received from the monitoring officer, as we know, the member swiftly left the business, and when his partner refused to cease trading, he removed all connection with the business. The member has fully cooperated with the investigation and has been very open about his position throughout. It appears to be a single incident, and he has since undertaken additional training on the code and planning, which indicates that he has reflected on the matter and is remorseful. The aggravating factors are that the member had been given advice by the planning department of the risks to the business of opening the business without permission, but he didn't consider the wider risk and the potential impact on his role. He could have sought advice on that, and as we've acknowledged already, that indicated a lack of judgment on his part. It's also an aggravating factor that the member is an experienced politician. I note that he says he's relatively inexperienced, but he is a member of the planning committee. He's also a member of a number of other committees, and therefore would have a greater working knowledge of council matters than some of his less experienced colleagues would, and that also needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Rowland, do you want to now address us in mitigation, or would you prefer Councillor Carroll to do that?
If Councillor Carroll could do that, that would be.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, you've heard what Mrs. Cook has said. I think she's put it very fairly, and she has put forward points in mitigation, but please help us as to how you would think we ought to approach this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you to members of the committee. I speak on behalf of Councillor Rowlands. As the committee have seen this morning, Councillor Rowlands is extremely remorseful about what happened. He has accepted that he did not conduct himself in a manner in which, in hindsight, he should have done, and has accepted responsibility for that. In his actions, Councillor Rowlands was naive. He has accepted that. He was an inexperienced member of the authority at the time. I note Ms. Cook's comments in relation to Councillor Rowlands' experience as a member of the Planning Committee and indeed other committees. To put matters into context, Chairman, Councillor Rowlands was first elected to the Vale of Glamorgan Council in 2017. At that point, he was immediately appointed to the council's planning committee. Like many, if not most councillors, he was appointed to the planning committee without any prior professional or indeed otherwise other experience of planning matters. He therefore entered the committee as a layperson. Mrs. Hallett, in her questioning, was absolutely right to make the point that councillors are expected to have a higher level of knowledge of such matters, especially if they are on the planning committee, than a member of the public would. But to put things into context, Mr. Chairman, it is a fact that local authority members and representatives are members of the public, and especially when they are new members, they do not have that prior experience. Training is provided to them, but when new members who have never been councillors or indeed elected representatives before enter into their roles, they receive training in a number of areas. There are several training programs. I think it was called a workshop or something similar back in 2017 for new members. So there is a lot of information to digest. And over time, councillors and members develop that experience and knowledge. And now, as opposed to in 2019, when this incident took place, Councillor Rowlands is in a far better place to make judgments on this. He has said that he would not behave in such a manner again were he in that situation. He has highlighted the fact that he would not even consider opening a business in future, given the impacts that this has had on him. And he deeply regrets what has happened. As has been made clear, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Councillor Rowlands has suffered deep distress as a result of this episode of affairs. It has been extremely debilitating on his mental health and well-being. It's been distressing. It's caused him stress. It's caused him reputational damage, which he deeply regrets. He regrets the fact that the report was released into the public domain at a time when it should have remained confidential, and that was obviously extremely distressing. When Councillor Rowlands first became aware of the breaches, and he accepts that he should have become aware of them sooner than he did, but when he first became aware, he immediately took steps to rectify them. He resigned from the business at considerable financial loss, and that is a loss that he continues to bear to this day. He has shown remorse and regret. He has learned his lesson from this. And given these mitigating factors and the lack of Councillor Rowlands' experience at the time that this took place, he had only been a councillor for 2 years at that point and had never served previously. We therefore request leniency from the committee when administering a sanction. Councillor Rowlands accepts that he breaches the code. He has breached the code of conduct and has not tried to hide from that. However, we would respectfully request that, taking these factors into account, the committee will instead impose a censure on Councillor Rowlands rather than a suspension. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful and very well put. Right. Subject to any members of the committee having any questions to either party. Yes, Councillor Robertson, rather.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask either party, are you aware of any new evidence that has come to light since the original decision of the Ombudsman on this matter?
I'm not. Mrs. Cook, do you want to try and answer that?
I'm not aware of anything that's relevant to the report.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, do you want to answer that?
I'm not sure in what Councillor Robinson is alluding to. All I understand, I don't know, to be honest, no.
I'm asking the question, Chair, on the basis that normally a review of an incident like this is called because there is new evidence. I mean, we're calling into doubt, or somebody's calling into doubt, the ability of the Ombudsman to make a decision.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Right, subject to no other questions, we will adjourn again. I would hope we could come to a decision by 12 o'clock. So, sorry, Mr. Watkins, your hand is up. Yep.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, to either Councillor Rowlands or Councillor Carroll, I've obviously read the papers as they have. It wasn't clear to me from the papers Councillor Rowlands' connection with this committee, the Standards Committee. Somewhere it says, it implies that he was once a member of the committee, and in another part it implies that he was a member of the Appointments Committee to this committee. Can we have that clarified, please?
Yeah.
I was on the Standards Appointment panel who appoint lay members when I first got elected. Then I was put on the Standards Committee, but had never actually gone to a Standards Committee because of this issue, and I withdrew myself from the Standards Committee with effect when this happened.
Right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll adjourn, go into private session now again until 12 o'clock, when hopefully we'll come back and let you know what our views are. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Rowlands can confirm if he's going to rejoin. Is he aware?
He is going to rejoin, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So welcome back to the Standards Committee hearing, and we're just waiting for one member, with your permission, Chair, if you'd rather wait to see if he comes on.
Minutes, yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, I just had a message from Councillor Carroll. The link has expired. Can I get in?
Okay.
I'll try and see if I can get him to join. I can't remember if he joined on his private email address. Can we remember if he did that?
He would have, yeah, because he had guest in his name.
Yeah, I'm just double checking. Trying if I can request to join. No. There's that one. He should be able to resubmit his recheck, because we've not stopped the meetings. We should be able to. Probably we would need to go in and out of his computer and try again. If you can bear with me, Chair, I can try and get hold of him, if you're happy to do that. If Councillor Rowlands may be happy for that, or if not.
I mean, there's basically we're going to give the decision. So I mean, you could relay this to him if you like, Councillor Rowlands. If we can finish now, or what would you prefer?
I would prefer Councillor Carroll to be in here with me, but I'll try and forward him the link as well now to him, see if it works. Excuse me, Chair. I think he's still having problems, so we should proceed because I don't want to hold.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, well, welcome back. We've considered this in some detail and considered the representations made by the Ombudsman and by Councillor Carroll on behalf of Councillor Rowlands. The Standards Committee is of the view that this is a serious breach, especially of a councillor who is on planning. It brought the council and indeed the town council into disrepute. It's certainly not a case where no action should be taken, and we don't think that a censure is appropriate. However, we do take on board the points that were put forward in mitigation. This was a single incident. Once you knew about it, or once you knew the significance and the seriousness of it, Councillor Rowlands, you took steps to try and extricate yourself from the position. But you, being on planning, you have a duty to uphold the high standards which are expected of you. In the circumstances, we think a suspension is appropriate, and we are going to suspend you for 1 month. Now, that suspension will take place after 21 days, because that gives you time to lodge a notice of appeal to an appeals tribunal if you think that's appropriate. You will be given a written notice by the committee, but you will be suspended for 1 month. I assume that's 1 calendar month. Thank you very much. That brings the business of the committee to an end. And so I wish you all good day, and thank you to the committee for being present, and thank you Councillor Rowlands and Councillor Carroll for being helpful, and for the officers from the Ombudsman as well. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Rowlands, Councillor Rowlands, you've got your hand up.
Is there a reason why I have to wait 21 months? I accept the.
Oh, you have to wait 21
punishment.
days.
21 days.
In case you want to appeal, basically.
I accept the decision. I much rather.
Yes. You need time to reflect on it. Don't decide straight away. I don't know. You'll have to speak to the officer here. If that can be brought forward, I don't know. But you basically have 21 days. And just go away and think about it. That's the way it works. All right.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank
you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.